I'm really excited about this panel discussion. As I shared, we've really had an emphasis at the department on helping businesses better access the grant funding that's available. Grants aren't the only solution, and they might not be a good fit for every business. But one of the things we hear the most often is, I looked into it and it was too complicated, so I gave up. Or I applied before and I didn't get it, so I don't want to spend my time, which is a very fair critique. These applications do take time to put together. Applications can be long, eligibility and allowable costs can be confusing. It's hard to find time to do this when you're busy also running a business and managing everything that comes with that. So I'm really excited to welcome this panel. It's full of people that I really admire and respect and also love their products. So I'm really excited for you to hear directly from them about their experiences. The good as well as the bad. So I'd love to start it off if everyone in the group could just introduce yourself, what you do, and just a short, maybe start with just like one key piece of information that you wish people knew at the start. Can I kick it off with Daniel?
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm Daniel Benites. I own Salsa del Diablo. Been in business about 11 years now. We're in like 70 plus local grocery stores from Harmon's to Whole Foods. Um, yeah, I think one thing about the grant that I wish I knew before is that it was easier than I thought it would be. And I feel like I needed to do a little bit more to pull the resources from the websites before I really sat down and started the grant process. Because I would kind of start the process and then go back in oh, it's all here. Why am I recreating the wheel here? So that was one thing that I would really wish I did is just go into those links and um, search as much information as you can before you really get started in the process.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Chris, how about you?
Chris Argyle. We run Argyle Acres up in Ogden Valley. We're a regenerative farm that raises direct to consumer. Something I wished I would have known at the beginning was to not be nervous of our local government and what they can do for you. There was so much mentality of the old school producers of just, oh, the government, it's watch out, watch out, watch out. But boy, UDAF has been an absolute blessing for our farm, and the things that they've done and the things they've helped me along with is I I don't know if we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for UDAF and the programs they provide.
That means a lot. I'm very grateful to hear it. Jordan, can I kick it to you?
Yes. Yes. I'm Jordan Riley. I run mostly peach orchards, and I'm up in Willard, Brigham, Perry area. We are building a building that we got some grant funding with, and I spent a lot of time on that grant writing process. What I wish I would have done that I had some help with at the last moments was someone who went to the rubric, checked through all of those, looked at all the objectives that needed to be, and decided how I fit in those. And then I worked my way backwards into the grant process. Would have saved me a vast amount of time of just writing and rewriting stuff that was less critical.
I think that's an excellent tip and something really encourage people to do. Like the closer you can align your project to the grant's intended outcome, like the higher you will rank by a long shot. Russ, how about you?
My name's Russ Kohler. I'm with Canyon View Farm as well as Heber Valley Artisan Cheese. So we got products all over grocery stores in the state. But I would say my biggest tip would be when you're going in for a grant, make sure you have a plan in place before you get there. It's a lot more difficult if you're flying by the seat of your pants than if you go in with what your kind of objective is up front. And once you get into the process, you just got to take it one step at a time. It may seem big and daunting, but it's not as bad once you start digging into it. So those would be my kind of tips.
Awesome. Thank you. Sierra, I know you prepared some slides with like really great background info. I was thinking maybe we could take the next like 5 or so minutes to walk through that in detail and also hear about your one tip you wish you'd give, and then save a portion of the time for either QA from the audience or things I'll nudge out.
Yeah, definitely. Let me just share my screen in that case. Just to make sure I understand, you want me to share my screens, my slides and go through those?
That'd be great.
Okay, perfect. All right. And let me just get to the presenter mode. Okay, is that working? Okay. All right. So, I am coming from a little bit of a unique perspective with this group, as I am the program manager for a nonprofit. So I work for the International Rescue Committee, which is a refugee resettlement and humanitarian aid organization. We have an arm of the program, of the organization called New Roots. And so we are focused on land access and agricultural business training for refugees and new Americans. And so that's kind of where we come into this. So we run 3 training farms in Salt Lake County. We currently have 55 farmers in our business training program. That equates to about 37 farm businesses that we're working with, and they're all assigned plots on our land, these 3 farm sites. And we have 7 full-time staff members, including myself, and we're mainly funded through USDA grants for staff time and supplies, mileage, all that kind of stuff. And so a big part of my job is grant writing and grant management. And so I've been doing this for about 3 years. I didn't have much experience with grant writing before I came into this role. I was very experienced in like program delivery before that. And so hopefully I can provide some tips of things that I wish that someone had told me or taught me or trained me on before I just got thrown into all of this. So just to go a little bit into it. So for our program, some things that grants have supported us on is on-farm infrastructure. We currently have an RFSI grant with UDAF, and it's been really helpful in terms of like middle of the supply chain, building out kind of wash stations and processing facilities and walk-in coolers. You can see a picture down on the right that is our walk-in coolers being built that are on the farm as part of that project. And then we have also gotten grants from NRCS in the past. And so those have been focused on conservation improvements as per their kind of rules and how they kind of give out grants. And then programming, we get a lot of grants from different areas of the USDA. And then some areas that we haven't gotten like grants, it's been hard to support is kind of ongoing costs. It's because a project is so focused on that one project or that one kind of outcome that you're trying to get, kind of doing ongoing costs is really difficult to fund. And so, you know, as a business owner, it works different than a nonprofit, but we try not to like rely on those costs being funded by a grant. So in terms of assessing a grant's fit, first of all, I would say make sure you read the RFA, RFP, so request for applications, request for proposals, and that has pretty much all the information you need to figure out what is the funder's priority, what are the requirements and eligibility, how you should fill out each section, is there match, how does the match work, all of that kind of stuff. So like that's number one. And what you really don't want to do is like apply for something that you aren't a good fit for because it's a lot of work and you either end up not getting it and putting in all that work, or you do get it and then you're trying to scramble together a project that doesn't really align with your business goals, and then it's just a lot of time and energy that isn't really worth it. So don't always go for everything, pretty much. And then I just have some key questions and stuff here to kind of, you know, think through when you're thinking about applying for something. And then some tips for writing a strong proposal that I found really helpful. Some of them are pretty obvious, but make sure you complete every section fully. You'll get disqualified if you don't. If you don't know how to fill out a section, reach out to the grants like contact person. They're usually extremely helpful. Log into the grant portal early. Make sure you have access. Don't do it the last day. Something could go wrong and then you've put in all that work. copy and paste the application questions into a Word document and work off of that until submission. We do that so that we can collaborate when we're working on grants, but it's also really helpful so you don't like accidentally submit it before you're ready. It's just a lot less scary. And then again, reach out to the grants point of contact with any questions. I've done this before, and again, it's kind of like a scary thing. You feel like you shouldn't do that, but they are actually really helpful. And then try to use both data and stories to illustrate the impact. It can be really easy to just kind of explain things, but having like kind of an in-depth story or kind of your background or like the data is really helpful to back it up and make a strong point. Make sure you follow all word limits. Most of them have word or character limits. Some of them are very short, which is annoying. I would say for those, ChatGPT is your friend. It can be very helpful to like, put in what you've written and say, please make this, 400 characters or less. And it's helpful if you're not very good at that like whole wordsmithing thing. I would also say if you're not very good at kind of if writing isn't one of your strong points, ChatGPT also can be really helpful if you do like make bullet points of the information you want to make sure you share in that answer, and then it kind of can craft it into a more cohesive statement. And that's kind of an easy way to do this. I don't know if funders want us to be using, AI, but I think they're using it to review applications too. So, it is the way of the world now. And then I would say prepare your budget in a separate spreadsheet first and then transfer it to the application. That's really helpful in terms of just kind of being able to play with numbers before you actually put it in as a final draft. Sometimes the portals will have kind of an automatic calculation thing, but if something is off, it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on. And then ask someone unfamiliar with your business to review. It's always helpful for me when someone from my organization who has nothing to do with agriculture or anything reviews, because they review it from kind of the point of view of like anyone, and we don't know who the reviewers are going to be. And so you don't want to have too much technical language in there that's not defined. And you definitely don't want to make it hard for the reviewers. They're generally not going to choose an application that they have a lot of questions about or don't understand. And then provide a very detailed budget narrative that very clearly explains how the funds will be used. I have an example here. This is from our RFSI application with UDAF. So this is just an example of like some supplies. In the application, it's an Adobe sort of form thing that you fill out. And so we had entered in all the information, and then this information in kind of the picture number 2, it's just like you can type whatever you want in there. There's no format or anything. And so what we really tried to do is make it as easy for the reviewer as possible. So we made sure everything was in the same order. We kind of like referred to the costs and how many units in there, and then we described it, and then said that the quote was attached. And so it makes it just really easy to understand kind of why something is being done and why it's needed, and make it really easy for them. Then in terms of like, once you've received the grant, how do you keep organized in case you get, monitoring, make sure that your invoices are all kind of organized, if you're doing reports, that kind of thing. So these are some things that I found to be really helpful. Make sure you set reminders for reporting dates and invoicing dates. Basic, but very important. If you have match, make sure you don't fall behind. It can be easy to just think you'll, report that at the end. But if something isn't going quite right, you don't want to wait until the end. And then if something isn't going to plan, communicate with the grantor. They like to know what's going on. A lot of times it can feel like, oh, I shouldn't tell them because they might take away my funding. But generally, they do want to know what's, going on. And like, for example, with our RFSI project, when we first applied for it, we had originally said that we wanted to purchase a refrigerated vehicle in year 2. But then when we actually got awarded the funds, we realized that that really wasn't the direction our program was going in, as we've really been focusing on getting our farmers to do deliveries independently, and our organization doesn't want us to have farmers borrowing vehicles owned by the organization. And so we reached out to UDAF and proposed a different idea that's still within kind of the grant's goals to build value-added processing stations on the farm instead. And they were very receptive to that and worked with us. And so it's definitely, like not as scary as it seems. And then same with the budget. You want to make sure you adjust it. Generally, budgets can be, you can spend like 10% of your entire budget over what you originally proposed without any changes or amendments. But if you do like, let's say you originally were planning to build a walk-in cooler on your farm and you were planning to have a contractor buy all of the equipment and supplies needed for that. And then it turns out that you actually are going to buy the equipment yourself. And then the contractor is just going to be paid the fee to actually build it. That would mean that your supplies, you would have a higher amount of supplies and a lower amount in the construction sections versus what you actually put in. And so you actually want to communicate with the funder to make sure that that all evens out so that you're not kind of in a bind at the end where things aren't actually working out the way that you said they were going to. And there's a lot of questions.
I think those are great points to make. Like more communication is better. And like it's our goal as grant administrators is just to get this money spent within like the intent of the grant. These have been really great tips. Thank you for putting this together. I'll pull it back to the group. Like you had some great information on the final slides that we're a little short on time for about like outcome measures. I would love to hear from the group, like how do you stay organized when there's so many things going on within your operations with, outcome tracking and reporting requirements? And also feel free, everyone come on mic. No need to like raise hands, just jump in whenever it feels right.
Sadly, I'd say some of my reminders start as writing on sticky notes, and I've learned that that doesn't work very well for me. So I now have a permanent notes in my phone with times and dates and things like that of like reminders of how to do things, how to keep track of stuff. Lucky for me, all my grants have always been kind of a one cost thing, one piece of equipment, one thing. I haven't had to really get in deep with contractors and all that other stuff. So I feel like on my end, it's been pretty simple because it's always just been one simple cost and it's that kind of a done deal.
I know several on this call are recipients both of state grants like the Utah Food Security Grant and also federal grants like RFSI or the Value Added Producer Grant or the not regional food systems. They all sound the same and blur together after a while. Could you talk about like some of the differences and how you were most prepared for either option? Or like how you found out about these opportunities and took advantage?
Yeah, if it's not well known already, anything state, to Carolyn's point earlier, anything coming through the state is going to be far easier. My experience, you generally have a direct contact you can work with on submitting everything, making sure you did what you needed to, you showed enough proof. On the federal, like a value-added producer grant, doing one of those many years ago, and it was just submitting off to the nebulous, and hoping that what we did was correct. For better, for worse, for time. Well, actually, anybody who's worked with me probably will tell you that to keep track and be organized is where I just plain drop the ball. So it's always a hassle in some form or fashion. Like I say, the state has been much easier processes, and typically those things are quarterly. So I am submitting information that I also have to submit other things, FICA, all the other stuff. So I'm usually doing things on a quarterly, and so I have to think through what else am I supposed to be submitting right now.
I think that's a great reminder. One of the things that I wanted to point out, if we're successful in getting increased funding for our food security grant, like I mentioned earlier, that will flow from federal funds, so it's likely going to be more complicated. Historically, we've gotten over $14 million in requests each year for only $1 million available. But this time, if we have $7 million available just in year one, knock on wood, that comes through, it will likely be much less competitive than it is in the past. But one thing that we're very concerned about is We don't know yet if it will require a cost match, but all of our grants are on a reimbursement basis. Can you talk about some of the challenges with the reimbursement and how you get ahead of cash flow or have that money ready so that you're able to take advantage? We're pretty quick on turnaround times once we get the invoices, but that doesn't make it any easier to just have $80,000 in your pocket ready to take advantage of an $80,000 grant.
I think for us, the big thing with that is just making sure you're planning ahead. When you're going into a grant, that's all fine and dandy to be awarded a grant, but especially if you're dealing one with a cost match, you've got to know beforehand where you're going to be with that. And this kind of ties into your previous question, but we've done grants both on the federal and the state level, and I would agree with him before that the state level is much easier to navigate. But when you get into that federal level, when you're doing matching funds and things like that, you got to know what that is ahead of time. But a lot of times, in our experience too, a lot of times they'll allow you to instead of using financial matching, you can actually use hours, and we found that to be a really useful tool when we were doing some of our grants as well.
Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, so for us with a matching grant, yeah, I think the planning ahead is the way to go. But I know my business, and I know summertime we like triple our business and we're killing it, and that's when we have more income. So I made it a point to like, okay, I need to tie this together with a matching grant that we hopefully will win, but like really kind of keeping some of that money reserved for that was one of my plans, and it worked out for the one we got. Another thing that's like super simple that I found is really helpful for organizing anything with a grant is, let's say you're applying for a couple grants. Like I have folders just for these specific grants, and like it was funny this last year I did that, and I'm like, why did I not do this before? Because I was like searching emails, and I'm like, this is just ridiculous. So, anyways, just something super simple like that really helped us like just get organized.
Little things are the big things for sure.
Yeah.
Allison, who's our grant program manager on my team, she and I are polar opposites. I've got like 37 Post-its on my desk, and she's meticulously. So I'm glad she's able to help with those kind of things. Chris, I talked with another poultry producer recently who's a recipient of our grants, and they were talking about like the cyclical nature of agriculture and the timing of these grants. And like, it's great that they got awarded, but they're only processing their poultry during this one window of time. So if they don't get the equipment ahead of that, then it really doesn't do them any good for like a whole annual, like year later. Have you had any like challenges with that?
I mean, I made sure that when I was applying for things, it wasn't things that my business needed to be dependent on happening right at that moment. I made sure that my business we were flowing, we were good. This was just a bonus that I was always planning for. Like we put in for the freezers, and I knew I could get to that current season with what I had, and we would just have to keep going. But what I was putting in for was something I knew would help me in the future. So if I didn't get it right away, it wasn't going to hurt. Which we applied for it, we got awarded it, and I didn't get it till the middle of winter when my season was done. So this is going to make or break my business if I don't get this right away, because the fact is things move a little slower. And like you said, it's finding that money, making sure you have that money. We're very unconventional the way we do things around here. And I ended up having a customer that was very well off, and I traded my agricultural mind and helped them out with a lot of things, and basically did trade for put up the money, let's get this thing done. And your interest is I'm going to help you out with what you got going. And that was our unconventional way of getting our funds to be able to pay for our freezers and do stuff like that. So there are ways.
Have good
there
friends.
are ways.
Sierra, you had a lot of great info in your slides that we didn't get to about like outcome tracking. And I loved what you emphasized, you and Jordan both, about aligning your grant application with what that grant is trying to accomplish. Like anything you'd like to share that you didn't get to touch on with the outcome reporting?
Yeah, so I guess I had some visuals and things, so I'll go back to share my screen again, if that's okay. So these are just things that I've found to be really helpful. So like when if you're doing more than one like facility or outcome or something like that, in a grant, make note of what you're doing because a lot of times, it can take so long to get it, you don't actually remember what you had put, two for or whatever. So this is just like a screenshot of one of our applications, and we, took it from the portal, made notes and edits on a Word document and then pasted it back in. But this is where I kind of like keep like, okay, what was I counting here so that when I do the report, I know what I was, originally thinking. Um, and then let's see, why is it not going to the next one? Sorry.
I can tend to be like toxically optimistic, for lack of better words, but I also think it's important to bring up some of the challenges. Several of you on this call were part of some of the worst career days I had when we had the federal funding freeze last year and the uncertainty with, are some of these grants going to be terminated? Are they paused for a day, a week, indefinitely? I don't I don't have the question I was planning on in mind with that, but what words of wisdom would you give to businesses considering this? Like, I think that I was very naive to the fact that both at the state level and federal level, political swings can change priorities. One would think a contract is a contract and you're good to go. We get a lot of questions from people who maybe think that a grant is a great like crutch for their business or a save the day, but I think several of you have emphasized that it is a tool, but not the scaffolding of a successful business.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in on this. We was part of the Southwest Food Biz Award, and that was quite the juggle, not knowing if it was coming through. We got awarded, but then the money froze, and it was this back and forth. And I think, yeah, a biggest thing that we really tried to emphasize on, and that we try to tell people with these grants is, it can't be that your business is going to survive only if you get this grant. What we try to put in for is things that we have in our business plan. It's almost like a little bit of a time machine. The grant, you get it, and it just happens to be that it moves it up your timeline a little bit. You get a little bit quicker, but it's something that you're working towards and going for. But it can't be the thing that, like, if you don't get this, you are going to fail. If you do that, there's a good chance that's going to happen, and that could happen to your business. So, I mean, I think your business got to be good, and these are just a tool that helps kind of these little leaps and bounds and gets you a little further ahead in it, but it's not a tool to keep your business alive.
Gordon, I see you're off mic.
Yeah, I've got I'm gonna flip this around for a second. There's our pretty mountains, and here is what we are currently building. So it is it very much has to be part of a growth mindset where you about have to assume that you're going to be expending money above and beyond whatever the grant parameters are, because you will overrun. And I also found out this is one main thing that I learned in this process was this is a building, and you have to think about that in the world of taxes. So I went and I got lines of credit lined up in order to do this project. I spent money on a building, which is a depreciable asset, but over time. I received reimbursements on that building. So let's say in year one, $200,000. I spent that money. I was reimbursed that money. But it's a depreciable asset that has not yet been put into service. We're still building that building. So it showed on I received a 1099-G. I mean, this is complicated stuff that you actually really do have to understand. So a 1099-G will come through and reflect as income. And because the building has not yet been put into service, you're showing $200,000 of income that you're going to pay tax on because you have not yet started the depreciation process. Does that make sense? So it comes through as a 1099-G. It actually took sitting down with a CPA and drilling in on this to get these answers figured out. So most times if you're buying a larger asset, you can probably depreciate it all out in 1 year or deduct it. But if, as Caroline says, that there's going to be an increase in funds available, people will probably take on more ambitious projects. And that is something that you have to take into account.
I think that's a really great reminder. And like the timing is everything. And then it gets more confusing, like state fiscal, federal fiscal, calendar year, tax year, all of that. Ruby Ward with USU has some great resources on tax implications. But yeah, I really encourage people to work with CPAs. I'm really glad that you brought that up. We are down to just our last couple of minutes. I really wanted to bug you, Daniel, about like what this meant for expansion in your business. And then Russ, I saw you come off mic. So maybe we can close it out with those thoughts.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
if there's something else you want to share.
Yeah, I have a couple things I want to share. So one thing with the whole grant writing process, just like outside of you rewarded it or whatever's going on, one thing that I gained like as a business owner was just like to look at my business, at like kind of the long-term view again. You do this all the time, but it was a great time to just like, okay, let's see what do we really need? What do we need for growth? So I just think the process, regardless if I would have got the grant, was really great for that kind of introspective view of my business. And it helped me quite a bit. And I think it was interesting, like getting the grants, and we have a new walk-in cooler now that we use. And my view of that was like, okay, this is great. This will help us grow, 5 years down the road. And then all of a sudden, like 6 weeks ago, I don't know what the catalyst was. I think there's a lot of things, but we started growing like crazy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we almost couldn't have functioned at our level right now without this new walk-in, and we would have made stuff work and had our stuff all over the place. But I think that it was just really surprising, and it was such a great timing and asset to have all of these things and to help our business grow as a result. But yeah, and I still keep looking back to like, okay, these are the things that I wrote down, and now we're like 3 years ahead of where I thought we'd be, which is super cool. But all of these pieces like played a big role in us being able to do that successfully.
Kind of reflects that time machine comment.
Oh.
Russ, I want to make sure you have the opportunity to share.
I was just gonna say, I think sometimes people make the mistake of like you receive the grant and you take a back seat, and then all of a sudden you're up against your deadline of when you need to use your grants. And so I think it's important that as you work with your grant, that you get things moving fairly quickly and don't wait for the deadline to slap you in the face. One other thing that we found that has helped us, that we've seemingly found, is when you're actually applying for those grants, if you're willing to put a little skin in the game, I find you're a little more successful at receiving grants. So if you're willing to pay for half of whatever you're getting, your chance of success of getting the grant when you're writing it, I think, goes up. And so consider as you're planning for these things, if you're planning to go after a grant, are you in a position where you could go in and do it half off? Because half off of something like that is a lot better than getting nothing at all. So when you're actually sitting down writing and thinking through it, if you're in a position to be able to pay for part of it, I think it's a good thing for you, and it gives you a better chance. So
I think that's a great point. Several of our grants require a cost match, but typically you do get extra preference points if you're able, and it just shows that like validity or viability of your business model. I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to join. Like this half hour went way, way, way faster than my other half hour, and really appreciate you taking the time to join. I know how busy things are. I hope people aren't turned off and appreciate the honest overview of grants. They really.
You have 10 more minutes.
Oh, great. Awesome. I thought we were like already over.
You guys have plenty of time, and we do have a couple questions that have come in too.
Awesome. I'll just share my one closing thought, and then the group can we'll look at the questions, and then I'd love to hear if anyone has any last thoughts they'd love to share. In that food system study, one of our RFSI recipients, I just want to show like the impact of that these grants can have in exponential growth. Like one of our recipients it's an ice cream company. They went from making about 1,200 units of product a day to now they're doing 2,600 units per hour. And they've added 4 jobs just this year and are on track to add another 4. Daniel, I know you've shared previously like that this has unlocked like not just local or statewide, but like regional growth and like market access for your products. So I hope people recognize that like grants can be an amazing tool to like, just like you're saying, help your business jump ahead 3, 5, 10 years in your business plan. One of the questions in the QA section is, have any of the business owners used YouTube, TikTok, etc. as a source of income? Really popular YouTube have made so much that they were able to buy farmland, vehicles, etc. Chris, I see your Instagrams all the time, but I know several others are active online.
Wish I could say I made something with our Instagram, but we don't. My wife has been on me for years that I need to have a YouTube channel because of my rants that I'm kind of become famous for, of talking and ranting in the field. So I do see a lot of that stuff. I mean, if you can do it, all the power to you, but definitely it's a long, hard road. And the people that are doing it and making it have put in a lot of years without making a dime. So definitely don't go into it thinking I'm going to be a YouTube star and that's how I'm going to find my farm, but if you can do it, do it. If you can do this other stuff, I mean, yeah, that's the way. The Instagram is kind of, I'm not a social media person, but we find it is kind of the tool to get our farm name out and get customers and get people to know who we are and what we're doing. The old school way of putting an ad in the newspaper or being in the phone book just don't work anymore. So you've got to kind of embrace it and get on it. And yeah, it's hard to pull out a phone when you're working, but the social media part, I feel like it's kind of a vital thing for farms these days.
That direct to consumer access point. And when people have that familiarity with your business, personally, like I feel like people are willing to pay more when they feel like they know you and go out of their way to buy your product in a different way. And also, like, it's just fun grabbing a product off the shelf and being like, oh, I know that person. We have another question that came in. Are grants available for agricultural cooperatives? My gut answer is like, yes, but the sub follow-up to that is it depends. What do you want to do with it? So that will dictate which grant you would be a good fit for. I assume more questions are probably going to come in, but maybe close off with like some final thoughts or guidance for the people who are part of this conference. Sierra, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Let's see. I guess I would say, like, if anyone wants some help creating like financial trackers or kind of what am I trying to say? Like outcomes trackers. That's a big thing that I've been working on just so I can keep track and not double count stuff and whatever. So, and we do multi-year grants, so that's why I'm like so careful about all of this. So if anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to share my templates and stuff that I've created to help you stay organized.
Really kind of you. I feel like so much of all of what we've talked about comes down to like partnerships and like people might be more willing to help, but if you don't ask, you don't know. So reach out to community partners. Russ, how about you?
I would just say, and I think it's already been mentioned, but just realize that grants they're not going to make or break your business, and they shouldn't make or break your business. If you're depending on a grant to help you survive, you got something broken. You got to do something different. Grants really are a great tool, but they're just like was talked about earlier. They're just a boost to get you kind of further along your plan. But if your plan's broken and it's not going to work without it, then it's not going to work either way. So no reason wasting the time if that's the case. So just be careful with them. But they are a great tool that can really give you a shot in the arm to get your business to leap forward.
One more question came in. Do you all use an ag-specific software or product management system? I know we heard sticky notes and glove compartment notebooks.
No,
Good
I
old
can't.
spreadsheets.
I don't use anything for ag specific, but if you're at the point of doing grants and all of that, hopefully you're also doing a lot with accounting. It's a drag. We all hate it. It is necessary, and you have to know it, and you have to do it, and you have to be on top of it, or have someone else who's on top of it. But that also costs.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great comment. Something we really wish we could help people with is like have your ducks in a row along the way. Like having those financials ready will go so far in helping your business be successful, like with grants and otherwise. Jordan, would you like to share any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're all in the same. That I feel like growing up in ag, I saw people who one specific outfit that I'm thinking of that felt like just got one grant after another, and I never felt like I saw anything really taking off of any of these steps that they're taking. And so it's don't chase grants just for the sake of money, because it will cost you in some way, shape, or form. It will cost you. And if it's not on the exact trajectory that you want to be headed on already, you'd probably be better off without it. So,
I think that's great. Yeah, square peg, round hole kind of situation with a lot of these. Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to share like one more thing that helped me like writing the grants. Or I guess a couple. So one thing I did was really like look at all the tools of the grant, take some notes, and then really align my project with some of the wording of the grant, and kind of take notes as I go. That worked really well. My wife is a much better wordsmith and much smarter than me. So if you have someone who you could like pull from to use like for that, it's great. Like she was great to bounce ideas off and really and give me a better answer or a more concise answer than what I was like coming up with. So that's really helpful. But I found like just taking notes really helped me really consolidate everything, so I kind of was going in the weeds sometimes, and that really helped me like figure things out and narrow my focus.
Exactly what I was going to say is it's so easy to get lost in the weeds with these kind of projects. Chris, if you want to close us off with one of your Instagram worthy rants or your words of wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah, well, what do we got? Do we got 2 more hours left in this talk here? I can go.
48 seconds.
Yeah, so I think what they was just saying about not chasing grants just for the sake of chasing a grant. I see this a lot with the high tunnel initiative. People that get these high tunnels, and then the amount of bare-boned high tunnels I drive around the state and see is sickening. So sometimes people go for something thinking it's going to be this glorious thing, and it's got to really be something that's going to stick with your business and be part of your business. And thinking smart and thinking intelligent about things. We run off of leased farms, leased land. So when I applied for my freezers, I made sure that I applied for portable walk-in freezers. So if something ever happened to the land I was on, my grant didn't get stuck with that. My grant got to go along with me. So it was able to follow with me. So thinking in the future, not everything is set. How you do things, if it's just really trying to think it out thoroughly. If you're purely trying to come up with a thought because you heard the grant, don't do it. When the grant comes up, go for something you've already had in your business plan that you've been trying to get to.
Love that. Thanks everyone for your time. I really appreciate you. Love your products. Thanks for taking on grants that allow you to make more of your products so more people can enjoy them. And if anyone has any questions following this, please don't hesitate to email either like my name at utah.gov or agriculture@utah.gov. I'm happy to get you in touch with the panelists or answer questions. Thanks for the time, Karen.